Welcome back to Crafting Men. I'm your host, Jared Hatch, and today I'll be reacting to a video from Schahrzad Morgan. I'm not entirely sure if I said her name properly, but she is a life coach and an author that focuses on sexual exploration and freedom. The specific video that I'm going to be reacting to is where she explains why she feels that men don't want a relationship with women. But before we get into that, be sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of the Crafting Men episodes. Okay, so let's set the stage here. First and foremost, I think that Miss Morgan has some great content on her channel when she talks about a lot of things that I think that she and I agree on. For instance, she has this video about how just because men are made doesn't mean that women are born, and she feels that women need to be made as well. She talks about how modesty is more attractive with women. She talks about how women are not into the hookup culture. All these different types of things which I think are consistent with reality, and I think that she and I agree on a lot of these things. Where I think that she and I disagree on is the emphasis and focus on the value of relationships. So principally speaking, you have to ask yourself, why would you take advice for a relationship from someone who doesn't value the concept of a relationship? It seems a little bit paradoxical if you ask me. And now I don't know this for sure, but when I was looking at some blogs and some other contextual information about Miss Morgan, it seems that she has an OnlyFans page. Why is this important? Well, I think it's important to understand the whole concept of birds of a feather flock together. I don't know why, but for some reason, a lot of these OnlyFans gals are thinking that they owe the world marital and relationship advice. I think they're probably the worst people to interact with when it comes to a relationship advice. But here we have it. Because as we all heard the saying growing up, birds of a feather flock together, you will always find within a social circumstance that the nerds hang out, the jocks hang out, and so on. They always find and gravitate to each other because it's where their comfort levels are. And so that means if you are a sex worker that makes pornography for a living, the type of men that you're going to interact with probably don't even respect women. They probably don't like or appreciate the value that women bring, and they're only going to look at them as an object to be used for their personal pleasure. I would not say that these are the type of men that you want to pull and interact with to set a standard of what is relationship material and what do they look for out of women for a relationship.
Let's talk about why so many men don't want to get into relationships, and women love relationships, right? For a man, a relationship requires a lot of emotional effort and time. And relationship-oriented men know this. Like, she wants you to care about her feelings. She wants to be listened to. She wants to have a warm-up before she has sex. And she wants you to do things with her and spend time with her. So you have to give up a lot of the stuff that you usually like to do if you're a guy.
She even alludes to this whole birds of a feather concept here, where she talks about how men that are focused on a relationship know that you need to invest into the emotional well-being of your partner. Strange concept, right?
Yeah, I guess I would say that a man who's got stuff going on, he is not so eager to get into a relationship because he knows, I got to text her good morning or good night. I got to make sure how she's feeling. I have to spend time with her.
Now, who does that remind you of? Because this is who I think of with that statement.
If she's never had anyone to teach her that respect, well, maybe you're the man who's going to make her respect. You're going to make her appreciate masculinity.
Yeah, he's got some great points about developing a respectful person, but I think he takes a little too far in just about all of his messages. Now, I've been married for over half of my life. That does not mean that I've given up who I am. I've not given up my hobbies. I have not changed the desires and outlooks that I have in life. Yes, I've modified them and I've course corrected so that way they can accommodate my wife and my children. Of course, I do that because I value them and I want them in my life. But I haven't lost who I am. It's not this burden to me. It's a very rewarding concept to have that support structure of family in my life where they need and depend on me and I'm able to depend on my wife. Because again, it's entirely inappropriate for a parent to emotionally depend on your children. But that's another video for another day. But let's be real here. It'd be creepy weird if I stopped being who I was to just focus on my wife or vice versa. You need to be a whole and a complete individual in order to have a healthy and productive relationship. If you are your relationship, you're kind of a jacked up person and not very enjoyable in any circumstance or environment. You're what's called unstable and therefore not relationship material. In order to be a good candidate for a relationship, you have to have your crap together in your life. If you are not grounded to a certain level, because let's be clear, none of us are perfectly grounded in life. So you have to be stable enough, right? But if your concept of who you are is your relationship, then you ain't nowhere close. So don't even try to establish that relationship. Focus on who you are. Make sure that you are confident and comfortable with yourself when you look in the mirror, and then you can look at establishing a relationship. It's really that simple. She also goes on to make a couple of statements that I don't think that data resonates with. Check this out.
See, for women, it's not a trade-off. We love spending time in relationships. We love giving up our time and giving your emotions. I think what women have to think about for a relationship is that a man's going to want sex. He's going to want sex and he's going to want cooking.
So I'm not really sure how this is supposed to be true. Why is it that according to dating site surveys that they find 80% of men unattractive? That they only want men that are at least 6 feet or in the top earning categories? Those all seem pretty superficial to me. Those are not emotionally driven, I want to connect and be validated by a person. That's a very superficial, I'm a skin deep beauty, really kind of a selfish piece of crap. And that's what you're finding with a lot of these feminist women on dating sites, to the point where it's pretty disturbing. That doesn't resonate with me when you say that, hey, women are just naturally built to have an emotional connection. Take it a step further and you realize that 70 to 90% of divorces are all initiated by the woman. If they're that good at emotionally connecting with people, why are they initiating all the divorces? I'm not saying that there aren't circumstances where it might be needed or appropriate, but the rampant amount and the imbalance between the men and the woman, come on. But putting all of that aside, let's look at how derogatory that it is to say that what a woman is going to bring to a relationship is sex and cooking. I'm sorry. If that's all that I needed from my wife, I'd be a piece of dirt, and my wife would be pretty pathetic for wanting to sign up for that. And that's certainly not a message that I want my daughter to hear for when she prepares to establish permanent long-term relationships later in her life. It's also pretty derogatory towards the men to say that the only thing that they need from women is sex and some cooking. That's a pretty superficial and very flat view of what we as men and as human creatures are. Men and women are both emotional creatures. We both need connection and validation. We just do it very differently because men and women are different. I don't think she has an issue with that concept. Looking at some of her other videos, she seemed, again, I think that's a point that she and I would agree on.
For a man, wanting a relationship is like you or me wanting a puppy. Like, puppies are so cute. Of course they like women. But to be in a relationship, like, do I want to own a puppy? You know, I need to take the puppy for walks. I need to feed it. I need to train it. Like, it's a huge emotional investment. There's a big difference between enjoying a puppy to look at or having a puppy at the park for an hour, also known as a hookup, and having a puppy that I'm responsible for. And a relationship is a responsibility.
After I view some of these things, I have to take a step back and realize that there are some people in this life that don't have a positive interaction with the opposite sex. I have to remind myself of that because I hear these things and I just have to wonder, where did it come from? How did it ever become a standard of acceptable statements? Because that doesn't resonate with me. Again, birds of a feather though, I don't allow men like that into my life, and men like that don't want me in their life. We're not compatible as friends or any other interaction beyond, yes, I work with some. I have to remind myself that perhaps that's all she's known from men in her life. And it's a sad statement more for her experience and how unfulfilled she as an individual was, as opposed to understanding that she's missing something. And it's a careful balance. I always have to strike with myself where I try to understand that, hey, some of these people have really just only interacted with dirtbags. I know men that have only interacted with crappy women, and there are women that have only interacted with crappy men. It happens. It doesn't mean that every man or every woman is a dirtbag. It means that some people are really crappy at figuring out who to hang out with and who to invest their emotional interactions with. She does make some good points in her video where she talks about how we as men sacrifice and provide. Relationships, yes, they're fulfilling, but there is an element of sacrifice for it. You do have to give of yourself. And I think that's an important acknowledgement that she makes. And she acknowledges that we as men do a lot of good things with providing and protecting, things of that nature that real women appreciate and real men want to give. And then she turns around and she asks the woman, but what do we give men? And she puzzles on that. She hums and haws on that a little bit. And then she goes to say, hey, maybe they want our radiance, our warmth. And she lists out some truly feminine qualities about nurturing and making a home, which I agree with all of it. And then again, she goes off with something like this.
That's just us being us. That's not something we have to give up. I don't really know what we give up to be with men.
And I think that's the critical aspect right here. A lot of people, from what I've heard when they talk about relationships, it's about what they're losing. Relationships in the modern world seem to be about power dynamics and what do I get out of it. It's a very transactional concept. It's, well, I did X, you must do Y. And it's, well, if you decided this, then I get to decide that because you ain't my boss. A lot of relationship interactions are breaking down because it's not a matter of just meeting each other and being partners. It's a matter of, you took something from me, so I get to take something from you. And I think that's a very sad and depressive way to look at relationships, because if you flipped it around and said, this isn't necessarily a sacrifice, it's an investment. Yes, as I said earlier, I've been married most of my adult life. That means that I have less time than the single guys that I know and interact with. That doesn't mean that my life is not fulfilled. I love the adventures that I'm able to go on with my wife and children. That's not a sacrifice to me, that's an investment. There's a difference in me wanting to give my time because I see the value and I see the worth and I want it in my life, than someone is demanding it from me and requiring it for me just so I can get in her pants. And I think that's the difference in the interaction here, where she's explaining and what relationships and marriage were ultimately designed to be. We are instead looking at what we can take from people and how much can I take from you before I have to give a little bit. Again, that's just a very sad and depressive view of a relationship. I think it's very short-sighted and just sad.
I don't think men are needy in the way that women are needy. And I don't mean needy as like anxiously attached. I mean needy as we need a man to invest emotionally into the relationship. And to a man, that's something they have to want to do. Whereas for women, we're built for connection. We love connection. It just comes naturally to us.
I'm going to have to use some of her own logic against her at this point. One of her other videos, she talks about how men are made, women are born, and she disagrees with that concept because you have to grow out of adolescence, you have to mature. Agree wholeheartedly with the principles and the concepts that she's making. Why is it then in her own video here, she talks about how women are born to be connected, and that's hard for men? Again, go back to the earlier statistics here about how women are extremely superficial in the dating game, about how almost all divorces are being initiated by women. If women are so good at being in a relationship, why are they so bad at it? And I don't care what anyone has to say. If you're going to say, well, the men are the problem or blah, 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 and I'm not going to say that men aren't the problem in these scenarios, but if you're going to make this statement that women are categorically better at relationships than men, why can't they figure out how to connect with them? Why can't they figure out how to make it work with them? When me as a consultant, I work with my clients, I don't expect them to know how to do what I'm advising them to do. That's what they're giving me money for. That's how I add value for them. So if you're operating from the assumption that you're born naturally with this innate ability to have a relationship, and you're working with someone in a relationship that is born with the innate ability to not understand relationships, then it's on you to make up the difference. I don't know any woman that's going to agree with that statement, because they're going to say that doesn't sound fair. And it's not fair, because men have to be given equal effort. You both have to want the relationship. Again, another old saying, it takes two to tango. I think that her logic here was accurate in the other video and inaccurate and inconsistent with its own internal justification in this video, because if women have to work on becoming a woman and not a child, then establishing a relationship is part of that concept. And therefore, neither men nor women are naturally good at being in a relationship, especially when we've socially conditioned everyone to say that, one, men are stupid, two, women can do everything that men can do but better, and three, women are fundamentally better than men. If you have taught in a generation that for their entire developmental years, adolescent, and now adult lives, it's no wonder why they don't know how to connect with each other. They know they want to connect with each other, but they don't know how. So what do men really want? It's really not that difficult. Men want validation too. The difference is that we want to be validated in the value that we produced. Remember, we're competitive based. We want to know that we earned a seat at the table. And so if you want to secure the man in your life, it's very simple. You have to be able to articulate to him how he's added value in your life. You have to be specific and you have to articulate specific examples of how, because of him, X happened. And in a good and positive way, right? Women are very good at saying, well, because of you, you screwed this up. No. Because if you're telling men they're not producing value for you, now they're not seeing the worth and the value of the relationship, because all they're seeing is they're hurting something that's their duty and obligation. They may want a relationship with you, but if they feel that they cannot add value in their life, then why are they going to stick around? It's the same reason why women don't want to stay with a man that's emotionally abusive. It's just that men and women express that emotion differently. For men, it's realized in the concept of production of value. If a woman convinces a man that he has produced value for her, then she will have a committed partner for as long as he still feels that's true. We as men compete for worth, value, and a place everywhere in life. And so to have an attractive, beautiful woman that is looking just at us and saying that we are producing value and meaning in her life, there's nothing close to the exhilaration and the purpose that will give us as men. I appreciate you spending the time with me today on Crafting Men. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of the other upcoming episodes.